Throughout ancient times, there were evil servants colluding with outsiders, while the heavenly family was watching closely. A bunch of underage offspring were waiting to be educated. Simply put, a young woman in her 30s from the 21st century is dressed as the supreme mistress of the general's mansion, which is a true statement. The evil servant was punished on the spot, and the heavenly family was exhausted. The cubs were obedient, following her lead. What? Exiled just after wearing it. Don't worry. With the help of space, I have everything in the world. On the road of exile, manage everything, open a shop in the wilderness, earn money, buy grain, plant medicine fields, fight weapons, recruit soldiers, buy horses, and fight the rivers and mountains. In the end, the great-grandson surrounded the entire hall. Great-grandmother, what else? Also, your grandfather's legs trembled when he wore armor, and he went to the battlefield to wet his pants. A voice interrupted helplessly, Mother, you've said these words 800 times. Your great-grandchildren are not tired of hearing them, I'm tired of them all. Good kid, who are you talking to? Mother, my son is wrong. The old servant knelt down and begged for mercy, raising his ears in front of him. Keywords of the novel. Exile, space, raising the mother of the sect without pop-ups, exile, space, raising the mother of the sect with her cubs. Download the complete TXT collection, Exile, space, raising the mother of the sect with her cubs. Read the latest chapter on raising the mother of the sect with her cubs. Chapter 1. Encountering a plagiarism upon arrival. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Encountering a plagiarism upon arrival. The incense burner was shrouded in white smoke, and the gauze curtains separated the table and table. The maid picked up the dried fruits and walked to the luxurious concubine's bed inside. The woman on the couch has a wheat-colored skin, with a touch of wind cream on her eyes and tail. Her face is full of vitality, and she is already over 50 years old, yet she still looks charming. Upon hearing the commotion, the woman slowly lifted her eyes and sighed, when has it been? Madame Hui, it's already Yusher. The one known as the old lady is Tang Zhongyue. Tang Zhongyue, who was in her 30s, came from the 21st century and died in an accident while picking herbs. The system gave her a chance to be reborn, requiring her to fulfill her original wish in order to bring her back to that world. She definitely wants to go back. She doesn't want her grandmother to send someone with white hair to someone with black hair, so she immediately responded to the system's request. As soon as she put it on, she found that the original owner was over 50, and below was a hall full of descendants. She accepted the memory of the original owner and even exclaimed, "Good guy." This is not only a fictional world from ancient times, but also a novel she read when she was young, because there was a cannon fodder named after her, so her memory is particularly deep. The cannon fodder is the original owner. The novel mainly revolves around the real and fake young masters of the general's mansion. And the male lead is a fake young master, Qian Zishu. This matter can be traced back to the border war. Xiao Zhezhong was brave and devoted, regardless of gender or age, and his family had been practicing martial arts since childhood. The original owner was born as a female military doctor, and he was foolish and loyal to the current emperor. However, the emperor was fatigued, addicted to elixirs, plagued by wars and natural disasters, with sycophants leading the way and withholding food and supplies. The original lord and husband held on to the last piece of the city and eventually collapsed. After the death of the former master's husband, the state of Chu suffered even more. The emperor increased taxes, promoted singing and dancing, and indulged in drunkenness and dreams. However, the former master, inheriting the inheritance of the Xiao family, repeatedly sent his legitimate and illegitimate sons to the battlefield, but in the end, he never survived. Except for the youngest son. The fourth generation has developed a greedy and afraid nature, with trembling legs when wearing armor and going to the battlefield to wet their pants. They marry the daughter of a scholar. The original intention was to place hope on the grandchildren, as there was only one son left. As for why the original owner didn't go to the battlefield. The original owner's hand was severely injured, unable to draw a bow or wield a spear. He is only suitable for paper warfare and is just a behind-the-scenes strategist. The emperor finally cleared his mind for a few years. He remembered the achievements of the general's mansion and rewarded him with many things. However, due to the popularity of the Shao mansion, he accused his deceased husband of colluding with the enemy and betraying the country, which led to the end of being exiled from his family. At this moment, it is precisely after the charges have been settled that the commanding officer of the royal guards is on his way to steal the house. Tang Zongyue stood up and waved away while organizing her thoughts. At the same age, Qian Mama, who held a high position in the general's mansion, still wanted to follow, but was rejected by Tang Zongyue. This Qian Mama was the accomplice who replaced the real and fake young masters back then, and she was a distant relative of the fake young master Qian Zishu's family. Qian Zishu's family was from a farmer's family. When he was born, he was injured in the ground, causing Qian Zishu to be sickly. He was criticized by the doctor for needing supplements to support Jin Guiming. Where can the Qian family afford it? We can only find our distant relative Qian Mama to find a solution. Qian Mama was crying when poor relatives came to her door. Coincidentally, she had made a mistake at the master's house and had her silver money deducted. With a twisted thought, she thought of the second young master who had just given birth to the fourth master. The Shao family has a strict family tradition, and the deceased General Shao was only married to the original owner and Aunt Lu. The original owner gave birth to the eldest son, third daughter, and fourth son of a veteran general. The third girl married the top scholar at an early age, and from the beginning, she was in the 6th grade of the Imperial Academy. With the help of the general's office, her husband's family became a 2nd-grade cabinet scholar. This third son-in-law is actually a kind-hearted person who seeks to repay his kindness. Even in the face of dismissal and salary reduction, he is unwilling to break away from the relationship with the general's mansion. The general's mansion and his family are temporarily imprisoned, and the third son-in-law is busy managing everything. The boss died in battle, and then his wife became depressed and did not survive the following year. De Fong has only one son left, named Xiao Zhonglu. He is 15 years old and is of the age to join the army. The fourth son is only one, Xiao Zhongli, now 12. After the discovery of the real and fake young master, the original owner took the initiative and made their identities public. They also wanted to send the fake young master Qian Zishu back to the farmer's house. Only this fourth daughter-in-law's temperament insisted on leaving behind the money book she had raised for many years, which led to a series of events that followed. The original owner remembered that his fourth daughter-in-law had been filial for many years, and according to her temperament, he did not let the true descendants of the Shao family suffer any injustice, so he raised Xiao Zhongli under his knee. Aunt Lu only had 2 grandchildren and 5 young girls left, who were in their prime years. The governor understood etiquette. In the year when the old general passed away, it happened to be the day of the birth of the 5th girl. The family remembered that she had lost her father at a young age and was born prematurely. Many of them felt sorry for her, but the good things were tight and she has been pampered to this day. Having 2 concubines gives birth to 2 sons and a daughter, Xiao Zhonghao, Xiao Zhongran, and Xiao Linger. Xiao Zhonghao and Xiao Zhongran are twins, currently 7 years old. Xiao Linger is only 3 years old. Upon hearing the news of their husband's death, their mother once lost her composure in the pavilion and dismissed her servants. However, she accidentally fell into the lake and called for help, but was unsuccessful. She sank into the lake and died. Salvaging the daughter-in-law of the commoner's house, the original owner had someone fill the lake. After sorting out the population of the big family, she arrived at the entrance of the general's mansion warehouse and, through the door, collected all the things inside into the space. She has been carrying space with her since birth in her previous life, which is infinitely large and has the function of time stillness. Probably to avoid spatio-temporal chaos, the things stored in the space before passing through are completely gone. She glanced at the newly collected treasure and hooked her lips with satisfaction. The foolish lord sent many good things to the general's mansion to block the mouths of the people all over the world. After the general's mansion finished raiding the house, these treasures were gathered in the private treasury of the foolish lord. This wishful thinking is working hard. I have made a wedding dress for her now. Madam, are you here? The speaker is the steward of the general's mansion, who has long been bribed by the incompetent ruler. The family of the general's mansion is able to run smoothly and not miss a single son's embezzlement into the public and corrupt ruler's private treasury. It all depends on this steward to take care of everything inside and outside, strictly managing every day, which is even more important than taking care of one's own life. I really don't know how the steward should explain to the foolish lord when Tang Zhanyue collects this space. Of course, this is not something she should worry about. Tang Zhanyue smiled knowingly and said, after all these years of hard work managing the vast general's mansion, when Brother Lu goes to the battlefield, your old salary will be mentioned again. Originally, the main focus was on cultivating grandchildren, and Aunt Lu had a weak and indecisive personality. Isn't this huge general's mansion being supervised by outsiders? It is also the original owner's trust in the steward. After all, the steward entered the battlefield with the old general when he was young, and retired due to inconvenience in his legs and feet. Later, he entered this harem. People are subject to change. How ambitious they were when they were young, and now they can't resist the temptation of money. It's not that it's not good, but Tang Zhanyue couldn't hold a grain of sand in her eyes, and the original owner could understand the actions of the steward. It's good if she doesn't retaliate and goes back. It's just making it impossible for the steward to give an explanation to the foolish lord. Of course, if she can retaliate in the future, she will not be lenient. Stroll around. Madam, are you alone? Tang Zhanyue squinted her eyes and said coldly, what's wrong? You want to take care of my affairs too? The steward's heart skipped a beat, and he became more and more conscious. He said the wrong thing and quickly bowed, the old lady is seriously ill. Tang Zhanyue said, I think you have worked hard and achieved great success. You have fought on the battlefield with the master, and you really consider yourself the head of this family. Can you take care of my affairs? The steward's thigh trembled and he knelt down with a thud, saying, Madam, I dare not. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Empty General's Mansion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Empty General's Mansion. The next second, the butler heard the other person chuckle and personally helped him up. Look at you, what are you nervous about? I'm just reminding you of my identity. Remember, never cross the line with the host and say anything, do you understand? I understand. Tang Zhanyue had other things to do, but she didn't have time to continue dealing with this person. She gave a few hasty instructions and then headed towards the direction of the granary. The general's mansion has a granary that can provide food for hundreds of people for over a decade. Fresh vegetables and meat are transported on the same day. After collecting several large granaries of grain into the space, Tang Zhanyue took another look at the kitchen. The kitchen has a reserve of fresh vegetables, meat, and fruits, all of which she avoids and provides storage space. As soon as I arrived at the backyard, I saw my fourth daughter-in-law Zhang sneakily carrying a bag and going out. Tang Zhanyue couldn't help but recall the plot of the original work. The farmer Qian, after switching to a child, did not treat Xiao Zhongli kindly and was very thoughtful towards him. Xiao Zhongli was beaten the hardest and did the most work, but the sister in the Qian family had a higher status than Xiao Zhongli. The Qian family bought a 2-year-older child bride and Xiao Zhongli was 3 years old in order to avoid being gossiped about by the villagers in the future. They raised the two of them as cows and horses in the Qian family. What is this not intentional abuse? The fact is in front of us, but Zhang still refuses to let go. The fourth scoundrel also relies on Zhang and uses his life to force the original owner to make concessions. The original owner had to reluctantly accept it. But the true and false identity of the young master must be made public, and the Qian family must escape this prison disaster, which cannot be discussed. Zhang eventually compromised, and Zishu also held a grudge against the original owner. In the past, Zishu was the legitimate son of the general's mansion, and the fourth house only had such a son, so people around him naturally had to hold him. Once their identities are exposed, those fox friends and dog friends will learn that Zishu was born into a farmer, and the Qian family has been practicing for years as the true legitimate grandson of the general's mansion. How could they miss the opportunity to step back? I don't know where that Zishu's face came from. He dares to stay at the general's mansion. It's me, I've already packed my bags and returned to the farmhouse. It's not true. His biological parents are really good at grinding the general's mansion. He still depends on the general's mansion and doesn't leave. A vicious family of farmers is also worthy of discussing with us. We don't even know what our identity is. Immediately, Zishu spoke harshly from the bottom of his heart and did not deceive the young man into poverty. Returning to the general's mansion, he worked hard to please Zhang and his adoptive father, hoping to seize his own resources. The true ruler of the general's mansion is the original owner. When Zishu realized this, he transferred his sweet words to the original owner, but in exchange for his cold and indifferent words. You were originally from the Qian family, and I thought it was for your mother's sake that I didn't expel you from the mansion. You should also live a peaceful life. Don't worry about everything that belongs to brotherly. Those things don't belong to you. At this point, Zishu began to work hard and climb the royal road to become an informant for the incompetent ruler, which was bound to destroy the general's mansion. And as a hero of the foolish ruler, he will eventually secure a position of both official and semi-official. Who dares to question his identity? At that time, he will invite his biological parents to his side, serve them well, and then slap the old lady of the general's mansion in the face. The emperor is mediocre and just addicted to elixirs, and loyalty is also important when dealing with sycophants. It is an embarrassing task for someone like Zishu, who can betray even the generals who have been raised for many years. Even if they are promoted, they must guard against their betrayal. It can be imagined that even if Zishu collaborated with the royal family to force the families of the general's mansion into exile, the final result was not satisfactory. Zhang learned in advance that the general's mansion was going to be raided, but he didn't tell anyone. He packed his long-cherished possessions and dowry and sent them to Zishu, choosing to seek refuge with this adopted son. It has been proven that Zishu has some abilities. With the help of favorable timing, location, and people, and with the start-up funds provided by his adoptive mother, he created a world of chaos and became the male lead who slapped his face in the TV series, making him the perfect candidate. However, the fate of Zhang's foster mother is not good. Zishu felt grateful for the exchange of his biological parents, which allowed him to survive at a young age and save him a lot of hardships. At the same time, he also took care of Zhang's foster mother. But once there is a conflict between the biological parents and the adoptive mother, Zishu naturally leans towards the biological parents. Zhang was the initial hero of Zishu's entrepreneurship, but he died in depression. Before his death, he only thought about his own son and the grand occasion of the general's mansion. She regretted it, but also knew it was already too late. Her body was discovered by the servants half a month later. After the person died, Zishu humbly sighed and said, "I've earned you a living, Mom. If Zhang's soul is still alive, he may have to vomit blood and die once. Where are we going?" Originally, after receiving the grain, Tang Zhangyue was going to find Zhang, but unexpectedly caught him in the backyard. Mother. Zhang was scared and confused, as the contents of the package scattered. Gold, silver, jewelry, thick stacks of silver banknotes, and even a lot of broken silver. Tang Zongyue raised her eyebrows and said, with all these good things in her arms, where are you going? Mother, mother. How could you be here? Zhang looked panicked and suddenly made a thud, kneeling down without getting up. This psychological quality is bad enough. I'll just admit it to myself. Tang Zongyue said, what are you doing with these belongings? Mom, I didn't. I heard that the commander-in-chief of the royal guards is on her way here, isn't she? Tang Zongyue pressed her step by step, waiting for Zhang to retreat. She then lowered her voice and whispered in Zhang's ear. As soon as the words fell, Zhang's face turned pale. Tang Zongyue stood up straight, and Zhang's mind froze for a few seconds before kowtowing to Tang Zongyue, Mother, it's all my fault for making mistakes. It's because I didn't teach my fellow scholar well and caused a catastrophic disaster to the general's mansion. Please spare me, Mother. It's okay to let you go, keep the things. Zhang took a breath and Tang Zongyue wrote lightly, after all these years, the general's mansion has spent the most on your room. These expenses are enough to cover your dowry, right? Eat from our general's mansion, live in our general's mansion, and in the end, cover up for that white-eyed wolf by giving money into his wallet. Zhang, have we ever treated you unfairly in the general's mansion? No, Mother. Since there is none, now I give you two choices. Either you go to the white-eyed wolf empty-handed, or you want to keep these silver coins and continue to stay at the general's mansion, advancing and retreating together. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. The Book of Harmony and the Separation of Mother and Son. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. The Book of Harmony and the Separation of Mother and Son. Xiao Jinghuan, the fourth in command, truly lives up to the name of a playboy. He knows nothing else and is proficient in both cat-walking and dog-teasing. He is also a selfish person. When news of the death of his other brothers on the battlefield came, there was not a single tear in his eyes. When he heard that the original master was training him, he hugged the original master's thigh and cried bitterly, which can be said to be a disgrace to the Xiao family. Therefore, wealthy families do not want their daughters to marry the fourth son. The successful marriage of the first few rooms was the imperial decree of the foolish lord, but Xiao Jinghuan, the original owner, personally went to the foolish lord to plead, and the fourth daughter. Law chose her own, without having to be born into a wealthy family. Well, Zhang, the daughter of a scholar, married in. The original owner thought that Zhang had a scholar father, who was at least knowledgeable and reasonable, and Xiao Jinghuan was in love with him. Who could have thought that small things are still safe, big things are so confusing? Yes, what pot comes with what lid? Xiao Jinghuan doesn't care about his parents and adopted children. He only cares about which grasshopper calls the loudest and which rooster fights the most fiercely. Zhang Shi also learns the same thing, only caring about which child is raised the closest. What? We still need to consider it. Zhang gritted her teeth and said, Mom, I want to book my buddy. She couldn't think more clearly. The general's mansion is on the verge of collapse. Even if you keep it now, how long can you hold this package in your arms? What's left after copying it home later? After copying the house, what is waiting for the entire general's mansion? Zhang couldn't even think about it. The worst way to send troops is to exile them to the border. We have to endure hardship anyway. It's better to seek refuge with Shuj. Even if it's not going well, we can go back to our mother's house and get through that hardship. In fact, when Shuj told her these things, she cried and hit him, but after all these years of pain, she couldn't bear to give up hard. After calming down and reminiscing about what Shuj had said before leaving, he quickly made a decision. Shuj heir. Mother, why do you think the general's mansion is still favored? It's just because the general's mansion won battles and one iron-blooded man after another died on the battlefield. Your Majesty remembers them. No. Your Majesty is afraid. Do you know how the people arrange your Majesty's works? Those ordinary people, who claimed to pass on the throne as a wise ruler, might as well hope that the descendants of the general's mansion will go to the battlefield. Mom, do you know how to write Empress Dowager? The general's mansion has long been a thorn in your majesty's eye. If you don't pull out this thorn, even if you win battles in the future and defeat those barbarians step by step, this country is not your majesty's country, but one surnamed Shao. Do you think your majesty can tolerate it? Even without me, there are others who have betrayed this general's mansion. I'm just trying to find a way out for myself in advance. Mom, you have to figure out whether to stay here or come with me. The words were spoken in the morning, and it was only a cup of tea for Zhang to figure them out. Tang Zhongyue mockingly curled up her lips and said, "You have to think carefully. That white-eyed wolf can even betray the general's mansion, which has raised him for more than a decade, let alone your foster mother. Do you think he's thinking about your upbringing? No, he's just angry. He's angry that he can only be above his brother. Angry that I'll expose his background and make it difficult for him to move in the capital. Zhang, he did this kind of thing. Do you think he can continue to establish himself in the capital in the future? Mother." Zhang's face was filled with tears. Tang Zhongyue waved her hand and said, "All right, I understand. Since I'm leaving, I'll write a letter of reconciliation for my son and cut off your relationship with Brotherly. From now on, your marriage has nothing to do with my son, and Brotherly won't be responsible for life, aging, illness, or death. I have never raised my ex-boyfriend before, which is not excessive, do you think?" Zhang. Zhang's face turned snow-white and hesitated for only 2 seconds. As soon as she thought about what the general's mansion was about to face, she quickly nodded and agreed to Tang Zhongyue's words. Tang Zhongyue used the bag sewn inside the sleeve of the pipa as a cover, took out a pen, ink, paper, and inkstone from the space, and wrote the letter of separation and separation between mother and son in the original owner's handwriting, asking Zhang to sign and draw an inscription. There are 2 copies in total, one for each person. On Zhang's side, she can't control it. However, on her side, if Zhang wants to climb up to Shao Zhongli through her mother's identity in the future, she also needs to see whether she agrees to this severance letter. Zhang signed and signed while shedding tears. Finally, she looked at this mother.in.law and hesitated to speak. Tang Zhongyue waved her hand and said, "All right, you go ahead. Let's pretend I haven't seen you before today. I won't say much in front of outsiders, but I can't hide it from my family. Please be calm and don't watch the general's mansion soar in the future. Splash dirty water at the general's mansion or lick your face to climb some connections, do you understand?" Zhang's crying came to an abrupt end. "I really want to refute my mother.in.law. It's not certain how many people will survive this time in the general's mansion. Where did they achieve great success? However, facing her mother.in.law's dominance all year round, Zhang was used to cowardice. At this moment, when she spoke, she didn't dare to jump out of her mouth and lowered her head to answer, "Yes." He hurriedly left. Without anyone around, Tang Zhongyue collected the scattered things on the ground into the space and Shiran headed towards the vast front yard. The royal guards rushed into the courtyard in unison, ignoring the obstruction of their servants. The commanding officer gave an order, "Search for me." The servants, regardless of gender, age, or the legitimate-illegitimate offspring of the general's mansion, were all neatly taken to the front yard. Tang Zhongyue walked leisurely and was invited to the front yard. This is the exact time for the original owner to take a break, without wearing any accessories. The only one carrying a jade pendant was also included in the space early on, dressed in the usual martial arts training attire. "The old lady is bothering me," said Zhongyu, the commander of the genie guard, bowing to Tang Dynasty. Tang Zhongyue nodded slightly and said, "But is it your majesty's will?" The commander's expression was complex. "My lord, come as ordered. Remember to go back and tell your majesty that without our general's mansion, no one will help him fight again." The commander's face suddenly changed, and not only that, but others also had a stern expression on their faces. The general's mansion won the hearts of the people, but it hindered the Tianjia road. The commander respected the people of the general's mansion very much and approached the palace maids upon arrival. During the body search, he invited the women of the general's mansion into the inner room. Where has Xiao Linger from the second room ever seen this kind of bullying? Normally, with a monkey-like temperament, I am now crying uncontrollably in Aunt Lu's arms. No matter how much I deceive, it won't work. Xiao Yuanong, the 5 girls who were close to her, was the little aunt of Ling's sister. Ling's sister usually listened to Xiao Yuanong's words the most. At this moment, when she started crying, even her words were useless. Tang Zhangyue frowned slightly and said sternly, "Why are you crying?" Ling and her sister cried a few times, and then, wow, whoa, whoa. Crying even louder. Tang Zhangyue's violent temper, under the pleading gaze of Aunt Lu, forcibly snatched Ling and her sister. Xiao Yuanong's face turned white and she said, "Mother, Sister Ling is not sensible." Xiao Zhonghao and Xiao Zhongran were somewhat afraid of Tang Zhangyue. After all, the image of the original owner deeply ingrained in people's hearts. But they were even more worried about their younger sister being harshly criticized, so they took the lead in apologizing for Xiao Linger. "Grandmother, every mistake is my brother's and my brother's fault. Please don't get angry." Aunt Lu also regained her senses and pleaded, "Please spare Sister Ling from the old lady." Tang Zhangyue. Does she look like a raging beast? Tang Zhangyue shook her arm, moved her stiff facial expression, and tried to soften her voice, saying, "All right, don't cry." Xiao Linger. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Copying Home and Copying Loneliness. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Copying Home and Copying Loneliness. Ling's sister still had tears in her eyes and a runny nose, which she forcefully sucked in. Compared to the sudden changes in her surroundings, Ling and her sister are more curious about her grandmother's attitude towards her grandmother is coaxing her. "My grandmother has always been alone and doesn't care about the affairs in the backyard. Only the male in the family started training when he was old and played the role of a strict mother. Even my older brother couldn't get along well with my grandmother. It was only my second brother who adopted his ancestors a few years ago that made my grandmother look a little more amiable. She dared to rub against her grandmother's embrace. Unlike the softness in my aunt's arms, my grandmother's body is tough. If my aunt's embrace is like a fragrant and soft candy, then my grandmother's embrace is as warm as bathing in sunlight. She just likes it all." Ling's flesh arm was hanging behind Tang Zhangyue's neck, watching a group of unfamiliar and imposing people enter and exit the mansion. She was afraid to bury her in Tang Zhangyue's neck. The eldest grandson Xiao Zhonglu was personally cultivated by the original owner. He is the oldest and has exceptional courage, making him the most outstanding among his peers. Xiao Zhonglu looked at all of this, and his gaze finally fell on Tang Zhangyue. He wanted to ask something, but suddenly stopped under Tang Zhangyue's gaze. Immediately, he reached out and said, "Grandmother, let me hold you." "No need." Young Master Xiao Zhongli looked around and wrote lightly, "Grandmother, isn't father here?" "I didn't mention Qian Zishu and Zhang Shi." After Qian Zishu's identity was made public, his surname returned to the Qian family. Tang Zhangyue sneered, "This is not the place to speak." Xiao Zhongli didn't ask any more questions. Ling's arms tightened a bit and she said nervously, "Grandmother." Tang Zhangyue hugged Ling with one hand and patted her back with the other, saying, "If you're tired, go to bed. Don't worry about these things for children." Oh. The commander of the royal guards, upon receiving a low report from his subordinates, his gaze sharply fell on the steward, who trembled on both knees and couldn't get up. "I really don't know, Commander, spare your life. Give me the courage, I dare not deceive the upper and lower levels." The commander of the royal guards was filled with anger and had to politely approach Tang Zhangyue, bowing and saying, "Madam, please inform us truthfully." Tang Zhangyue was puzzled and said, tell me what. The commander furrowed his brows and looked deliberately at these young and old people, saying, even the old lady doesn't want to suffer some physical pain from her family, does she? Tang Zhangyue finally handed Ling and her daughter over to Xiao Zhonglu, and then said in a polite tone, Commander, could you take a step to speak? Commander. Madam, please. When he arrived at the secluded corner, the commander admired him and said, when did the old lady find out? He refers to managing the affairs of betrayal and plagiarism. Tang Zhangyue said, it's just a few cups of tea before commanding you to come. The commander clearly did not believe it. Tang Zhangyue sneered, last night I couldn't sleep peacefully and was always daydreaming by old Xiao. During the day, my appetite was low, so I wandered around the mansion to dispel the frustration in my heart. However, on the way, I met the steward at home and asked where I was going. I don't know which steward would act recklessly on the head of the master to inquire about his whereabouts. Also, strolling to the backyard, I saw the sneaky behavior of the fourth family. In addition to being flustered, she dropped her burden and confessed to the money family's white-eyed wolf without hesitation, only then did her old body know the ins and outs. If the commander suspects that the old man has already known His Majesty's intentions, he can send someone to investigate. Seeing Tang Zhangyue's confident and fearless appearance, the commander paused for a moment. The general's mansion has long been a sieve, with His Majesty's people scattered everywhere. Not only are the officials in the mansion, but others are also staring at the warehouse. Not to mention in the past half-month, even in the past half-year, the old lady did not go into the warehouse to count one or two items. After receiving the reward from His Majesty, she stored them. Even if it was done by the old lady, how did she avoid all eyes and ears and empty the warehouse of the general's mansion? The old lady doesn't count the warehouse, and the steward and accountant also check it every month. Not only the warehouse, but also the granary has been swept away, which is equivalent to copying home and feeling lonely. The commander was feeling anxious and had to order his subordinates to tidy up the gold, silver, jewelry, and silk in each room. However, these alone may not be able to deliver to your Majesty. It seems that the old lady is able to endure the hardships of flesh and skin. Tang Zhangyue, however, was not afraid. Go back and tell your Majesty that the evidence he found, not only the ministers of the court, but also the common people, will not believe it. Anyone can betray the country, but our general's office alone cannot. If he forcibly uses means, he will even sow discord among the people. What about the infamous reputation imposed on the head of the general's mansion by the foolish ruler? Who believes it? Imprisoning them in dungeons, isn't it better to keep them alive? Can the foolish ruler not understand this matter? This is not reminding the foolish ruler, it is informing the commander that she is always old but knows the situation. Don't try to fool her. Tang Zhangyue said, it's better for the commander to interrogate me than to investigate the other people in the general's mansion. The commander pondered for a moment and his gaze fell on the kneeling steward. This steward is suspected. If he collaborates with others, he can indeed avoid the hidden wealth of the general's mansion. Anyone in the mansion may interfere with the warehouse, but the old lady cannot. After all, various forces are watching and waiting for a legitimate reason to kill the Xiao family. Otherwise, your Majesty will not use his brainpower on so-called collusion with the enemy and treason. Thank you very much for the old lady's reminder. Tang Zhangyue then said with a pleasant expression, you're welcome. Well, before the person is exiled, just take care of a steward. Let this person betray their master's family and suffer the consequences. Afterwards, the steward did not receive any rewards and was subjected to severe torture. Even if he came out of prison, no mansion dared to use him. He can only go to another land and find a way out. Besides, when the Xiao family was taken to the dungeon by the people of the Jini Wei, that scoundrel Lao Si finally appeared. It wasn't because he appeared voluntarily, but because he was discovered by the twins in the second bedroom. Xiao Zhonghao. Grandmother, the person lying over there looks like fourth uncle. Xiao Zhongran said, he's really the fourth uncle. Because Xiao Jinghuan stood horizontally in the middle of the street, blocking people's way. Someone grabbed Xiao Jinghuan, but didn't they just expose her heavy eye bags, pale complexion, and kidney deficiency at first glance? Tang Zongyue nodded slightly and said, it's indeed your fourth uncle. After speaking, she pointed to the messy and decadent bastard at the Genie Way and said, this is also from our general's mansion. Why don't you all take the risk together? Others. Immediately after, the scoundrel was set up by two genie guards, driving away Su while intoxicated, but still speaking unkempt words. He, my victorious general has won. Winning. As soon as the words fell, the royal guards touched the bastard's arms and indeed pulled out tens of taels of silver, making passers-by unable to bear to look directly at him. Tang Zongyue exclaimed that although the state of Chu was chaotic, the security at the feet of the foolish ruler in the capital was good. This drunkard had been lying for an unknown amount of time, and so much silver in his pocket had not been touched by the beggar. Which mansion's family are you betting on? Shu. From the general's mansion. The crowd looked at Tang Zongyue, the oldest in the queue, with a hint of admiration in her eyes. No wonder, I heard that the fourth master of the general's mansion is not very neat. When I saw him today, he really did. Sir. The general's mansion has been wrongly accused. A mournful voice pierced through the sky, and suddenly there was silence all around. The person who was seeking justice for the general's mansion took the initiative to make way. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. 10,000 blood certificates to prove the reputation of the general's mansion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. 10,000 blood certificates to prove the reputation of the general's mansion. This plot is also present in the original work. Now located on the border of Chu, I am afraid of the authority of the Xiao family and dare not invade, which leads to my foolish ruler thinking that Chu is a peaceful country. Who would have thought that the Xiao family would be scattered on the road, dead and disabled, leaving only Xiao Zhongli, the real young master, to slap Qian Zishu in the face? Why did the general's mansion fall into this territory? It is all due to colluding with officials from other countries, as well as the barbarians who were originally afraid of the shogun's mansion. It can be said that the foolish ruler personally cut off his own wings and flaunted his weaknesses in the mouths of foreign countries. No wonder the final outcome was to destroy the country and be devoured by other countries. The reason why the foolish ruler did not move the general's mansion is because of the blood letters of these 10,000 people. It was the former subordinate of the Red Flame Army in a civilian organization. One person knelt in front of the royal guards, one by one, while other civilians also knelt down. Even those who watched the commotion, knowing about the battle and realizing that the general's mansion was accused of colluding with the enemy and betraying the country, knelt down one after another. The commander of the royal guards made their scalp tingle, and they eventually became lackeys in the eyes of the common people. The blood book of 10,000 people also has its drawbacks, making the foolish ruler even more wary of the reputation of the general's mansion. So, this talisman must be surrendered. Tang Zongyue didn't hide it and revealed the hiding place of the military talisman. The commander instructed his subordinates to search quickly and found the talisman. The commander made his expression complex. Tang Zongyue sat in the dungeon, closing her eyes and recuperating, saying, "Thank you very much to the commander for imprisoning the female family members of our mansion in one cell. It's just. There was a missing person among them." The commander kindly found a maid of Xiao Yuechun and transferred her to the old man's cell. This Xiao Yuechun. It was the fault of the Qian family. I felt sorry for her and kept her in the mansion all along. The commander didn't respond and went out. I believe it is necessary to investigate the origin of Xiao Yuechun's maid, and the respected old lady of the general's mansion must personally name her. No, Xiao Yuechun is not considered a maid of the general's mansion. This child has always been a free agent. Xiao Yuechun is the poor person who was bought by the Qian family with a few taels of silver as a child bride for Xiao Zhongli. In the Qian family's years, Xiao Yuechun had been secretly taking care of Xiao Zhongli, sharing farm work for him, and even protecting him from being beaten. It was only after arriving at the general's mansion that Xiao Yuechun was assigned by the old lady to the side of the fifth girl Xiao Yuanong due to the difference between men and women, that she became estranged from Xiao Zhongli for several years. When it was released, Xiao Yuechun was not a member of the general's mansion, but also a free person. There was no need to enter that dental shop again, but she resolutely followed the exile path, protecting the Xiao family multiple times, and even went blind when rescuing Xiao Zhongli. In the novel, it is mentioned that Xiao Zhongli asked Xiao Yuechun why, and the latter said, "When I was a child, I experienced famine. My mother sold me for half a steamed bun. At the dental store, they all said I was too thin and no one wanted me. It was the Qian family who bought me back. I thought I had found a home, but they just wanted to buy a slave and come back. Brotherly, you were born beautiful and shouldn't have suffered those sins." Just later, when she arrived at the general's mansion, the 5 girls gave the maidservants a lot of food and comfortable clothing. The food was so delicious, and the ingredients were also feeling comfortable. The old lady and the others are all good people. They have never treated me harshly, and the people also remember the kindness of the Xiao family. A good person must have good karma. Unfortunately, in the ending of the novel, the Xiao family did not receive any good rewards. Xiao Yuechun also sacrificed herself for the last time to save Xiao Zhongli. Afterwards, Xiao Zhongli disfigured himself, concealed his name, recruited troops and horses, and sought opportunities to seek revenge recklessly. When the state of Chu was destroyed, he aimed at Qian Zishu, but failed several times and ultimately died. Who made Qian Zishu the male lead? Grandmother. Ling, who was in her arms, rubbed her eyes, still feeling sleepy. "Grandmother, I'm hungry." Tang Zhangyue sat on the hay bed and let Ling sit on her lap, extending her hand into her sleeve. In reality, she took out a soft pastry from the space and slowly broke it into pieces to give to Ling's mouth. Ling's sister had been starving for a long time, and now that she had tasted the familiar soft and sweet taste, her eyes lit up a bit. Ling and her sister were quietly fed without daring to speak. Tang Zhangyue fed half of it before handing the remaining half to Aunt Lu. "You and Xiao Wu share a share," he said. Aunt Lu took the dim sum less than half a slap in the face and asked carefully. "Where are you, old lady?" Tang Zhangyue said, "Can I still starve myself?" Her tone became more aggressive, and Ling's sister suddenly clenched her hand, her back stiffening. Helpless, Tang Zhangyue had to lower her voice and say, "It's not that bad for your aunt." "Grandmother." Is the general's mansion gone?" "Sooner or later, there will be some," Tang Zhangyue said with deep eyes. "In the future, the foundation of the general's mansion will be in space, and there is no need to worry about a comeback. The glory of the state of Chu has only been in these few years. So, will we be beheaded?" Aunt Lu was a little short of money. Even Xiao Yuanong, who ate dim sum gracefully and quickly, shouted, "Sister Ling." Ling's sister shrank her neck and heard Tang Zhangyue chuckle lightly, "I don't know. The male soldiers of the general's mansion live in the opposite cell." There was silence all around, and naturally, the movements on their side were also heard by the 4 little boys. Not long after, the commander roughly found out the truth and took Xiao Yuechun to Tang Zhangyue's cell. "Commander. I have kept the old man waiting for a long time." Tang Zhangyue said, "Thank you very much, sir, for taking the trouble. Someone wants to see the old lady." Tang Zhangyue raised her eyebrows and said, "The people in the general's mansion have all become prisoners. Is there anyone else coming to visit them? I think it's because before Lao Xiao passed away, he made me do more justice in return." The commander didn't say anything and asked his subordinates to bring their 3rd son. In law. Now, Yu Zishu, a 2nd class cabinet scholar, came to the prison with a lunch box. Zishu held 2 large lunch boxes and allowed his subordinates to guard on both sides. He knelt down and said, "Mother, I know Su is late." Tang Zhangyue handed Ling's sister over to Aunt Lu and approached, saying, "Good child, get up and talk." The commander and other officials left with their feet raised. Zishu didn't rush to get to the point, but said, "Mother, Yan Yang, she heard about the matter in the mansion and fainted on the spot. She hasn't woken up yet. My mother is taking care of her and can't come. I hope you can forgive me." Tang Zhangyue comforted, "Your in-laws have allowed you to come. I believe you acknowledge this family, and I don't know how many times better you are than the white-eyed wolf we have raised for over a decade. So you don't need to blame yourself." "Mother, where are you talking about? Zishu has achieved his current success, thanks to your connections taking care of him both openly and secretly." Zishu lowered his voice and glanced at the 2 people with stern faces. He took out a few silver coins and walked over, saying, "Could you please take a step to speak, big brother?" Not long after, Zishu returned alone. Zishu's face darkened, and he faded from the surface greetings with Tang Zhangyue. He said seriously, "Mother, the uncles you took me to know before, I visited before, and they all avoided each other." Tang Zhangyue didn't mind and said, "It's common for people to fly when a big disaster comes. Mother, this time you came just in time. There are a few miscellaneous items that need your attention. They want to take advantage of the chaos in the general's mansion and fish in troubled waters. First of all, it's Grandma Qian. In the past, the true and false young master's situation relied on the fact that the Qian family would not reveal her. Qian Mama was confident and stayed by the original owner's side as the unfamiliar dog. Even in recent years, he has gained many benefits by threatening Qian Zishu, and of course, he has to spit them out. And then there are those little scumbags. Eating from the general's mansion, using the general's mansion, receiving the general's mansion's monthly salary, and ultimately, working for other families, still wanting to be independent. I think it's quite beautiful. If you are in charge, you don't need to worry too much about being tripped by her and not being able to stir up trouble in the future." End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Postoperative Diseases. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Postoperative Diseases. Next, it's the Qian family. Isn't Qian Zishu hoping to use this opportunity to invite credit? Although Tang Zhangyue did not make a good start in the original work and was not favored by the incompetent ruler, he did not mind adding another fire to make the fire even stronger. Let these dogs who eat from the inside out be beaten up by everyone, without even a chance to make a living. The foolish lord is still paying attention to the movements of these family members in the general's mansion, and is not concerned about the lives of other people in the general's mansion, even though these people are the informants of the foolish lord. Zishu listened attentively as Tang Zhangyue calmly explained his plan. His handsome white face suddenly turned red with anger. How dare these people? How dare they? Zishu said, "Don't worry, mother. Zishu will never let these animals get better." Tang Zhangyue took out 3 silver bills from the cuffs, all starting at 10,000 taels, which surprised Zishu and caused him to quickly refuse. "Mom, no way. These are all things I should do." Tang Zhangyue spoke strongly, "Take it." Seeing that Zishu still disagreed, Tang Zhangyue said, "If you are that treacherous minister, you can bribe us and just help our Shao family. It is precisely because you have clean sleeves that you can sit in your current position without fear of your Majesty's investigation. Over the years, you have made achievements to show your Majesty, but how much silver do you have in your pocket to manage? These are for our own benefit, so don't feel guilty holding them. It's really not possible. If someone finds out, you can say it's Yan Heir's dowry." The third-ranked girl from the original owner, whose full name is Xiao Yuan. In the novel, Zishu manages everything and spends all the savings in the mansion. Finally, it is Xiao Yuan who takes out her dowry before continuing it. Now, where does this couple need their silver? Go back. Okay, mother, take good care of yourself. Zishu was not too pedantic either. After understanding the pros and cons and the situation, he accepted it calmly. Tang Zhongyue nodded contentedly and said, when managing, be more covert. It's really not enough, and there's no need to deliberately conceal it. What the higher-ups should know naturally will know. Our general's office wants to retaliate against this small matter, and your majesty will not stop it. Got it, Mom. Well, go ahead. The mixed lunchboxes were given to each of their 2 cells, one by one, and Tang Zhongyue only had her first ancient dish to eat. It's gourd chicken. There are some jagged teeth, and the taste is not so positive. Tang Zhongyue took 2 bites and saw the 2 girls eating with relish. Grandmother, won't you eat any more? Ling asked naively. I won't eat any more. Then I won't eat either. Tang Zhongyue raised her eyebrows, and Ling's sister spoke in childlike language, saying, I don't know if third auntie will come tomorrow. I'll keep it for tomorrow to eat, right, grandmother? Tang Zhongyue touched Ling's hair bun and said, finish it. If you don't eat it, the mice in this prison won't be left for you. Old mouse. Ling's sister trembled with fear. Ling and her sister dare not stay overnight for dinner, fearing that the mice will be cheaper and that the mice will really take care of their cell. Ling's sister was still trembling and said, Grandmother, I ate clean. You're so good. So, there won't be any mice, will there? I can't say for sure. Woo. So scared. I'm afraid. Tang Zhongyue said, don't worry, mice don't eat people. Don't you eat my hands. Who told you that mice will eat their hands? I heard a maid say, I'm extremely hungry. The mouse can eat people's hands and even bite off her uncle's ear. So impressive. Tang Zhongyue remembered that in the past few years, there were constant natural disasters and indeed rat infestations. Tang Zhongyue said, mice don't steal food and can eat people, but now it's not like before. The people have a harvest, and mice won't eat people, nor will they eat your hands. Ling's sister let her heart go. Go to bed quickly, I believe your majesty will have results tomorrow. The next day. The crowd was awakened by the screams of scumbags. Mouse. There's a mouse. Help. Ling and her sister suddenly plunged into Tang Zhongyue's arms. Tang Zhongyue comforted and said, we don't have any mice in this cell. Rest assured. Ling's sister breathed a sigh of relief. Xiao Zhonglu and the 2 twins worked together to drive away the mouse, and only then did the scoundrel have the time to cover his hangover head and look around. Where is this? Where? Hee hee. Tang Zhongyue's cold snort abruptly put an end to Xiao Jinghuan's absurd behavior. Xiao Jinghuan's scalp tightened and instinctively stood up respectfully, bowing to the source of the sound, Mother. It seems that you still recognize me as a mother. Upon hearing the sound, Xiao Jinghuan dared not even lift her head. His eyes were just a bit clear, staring at the bluestone slab under his feet, feeling the dark environment around him, and for a moment he became even more confused. With a tight and respectful expression on his lips, he said, Mother is serious. Since I am your mother, I have the right to take care of your marriage and let you separate, right? What does mother mean? Xiao Jinghuan didn't know why, so she suddenly looked up, her pupils slightly narrowed, and looked at her in shock. What do you mean? Kneel down. Tang Zhongyue's voice was resounding and powerful, like a sharp blade, pressing heavily on his neck, forcing him to suddenly kneel down with a thud. The others remained silent. Who is the largest in the general's mansion? You are an old lady. The old lady said east, who dares to go west? The words of the old lady are military orders, more commonly used than imperial edicts. The old lady teaches people, they can only listen. Moreover, this person really deserves training. Mother. Xiao Jinghuan tried to soften her temper and act coquettishly to pass the level. What a mother! I'm not your mother. Tang Zhongyue said coldly, when you wanted to marry a small family, I didn't interfere. According to the dowry standards of the other rooms, I married that Yulan into the general's mansion. As soon as the incident with Li Gu'er occurred, she said that she had been raising Qian Zishu for over a decade and had already developed feelings. You 2 feet are tied together, and she cannot bear to part with her adopted son. You use death to force her, okay, she also depends on you. But take a look at what that white-eyed wolf has brought to the general's mansion. Take a look at the women in the general's mansion again, but there is also your jade lady. Xiao Jinghuan was born in the general's mansion. Even if he was a waste, with Tang Zhonyue's fierce words, he would still feel dizzy, and his eyes would turn golden. Prison, adopted son, Yunyang. How to listen separately. He can understand its literal meaning. Connected together, he becomes confused. His lips trembled as he said, Mother, this is impossible, Yunyang. Tang Zhongyue closed her eyes and looked at Xiao Jinghuan, who was also a family member of the entire general's mansion, saying, Qian Zishu betrayed the Xiao family. Zhang knew about this, but what he wanted was to take away the family's wealth and defect to Qian Zishu, which I immediately smashed. I will make the decision for you. I will write a letter of reconciliation with Zhang, who is facing great difficulties and has flown away separately. I will also write a letter of separation between mother and son for Zhang, who has never fulfilled his obligation to raise him, and has even chosen the white-eyed wolf to adopt his son several times, which has chilled Li's heart and repaid his kindness to give birth. I'll ask you and Brother Li now if I can be the master. If possible, you 2 can advance and retreat together with our general's mansion. If not. Grandmother, thank you grandchild. Xiao Zhongli interrupted urgently. Tang Zhongyue nodded and said, not bad, truly worthy of being our Xiao family's son. However, this temperament needs further training. Xiao Zhongli bowed and said, I will strictly follow my grandmother's teachings. Tang Zhongyue saw this bastard still in a daze under the dim candlelight of the dungeon. She lowered her gaze and continued, if not. Do you still think about the Zhang family who brought the ultimate disaster to the Xiao family? Today, our mother-son relationship has ended. When the commander arrives, I will ask the commander to let you free and go find the Zhang family to continue our marital relationship. Mother. Xiao Jinghuan lost her voice. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. The traitors end in the general's mansion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. The traitors end in the general's mansion. What kind of person does my mother think I am? I just don't believe that Yunyang will become like this. Tang Zhonyue mockingly curled her lips and said, don't you believe it? So you doubt being a mother? Do you suspect that I'm lying to you? Xiao Jinghuan wanted to say a few more words, but next second, he noticed that the children and women at home were all watching him with caution. As if he were that outsider. Xiao Jinghuan's Adam's apple rolled dryly, and Tang Zhonyue said again, Aunt Lu married into the general's mansion, but her surname is not Xiao. She can still leave. Why is she in this prison? Why is Aunt Lu here as an elder, but she is not? She has lost her heart to Qian Zishu, and there is no need for another unreasonable and insane person in her family. If the Xiao family is stabbed again, our Xiao family will really fall into an irreparable disaster. Fourth, I'm not just your son, I also have grandchildren to protect. They are all the orphans of your brothers who died in battle. If something happens to me, I'm afraid I won't have the courage to face your underground father and brothers after death, old 4. If it weren't for the original owner still holding a last wish for this bastard, Tang Zhonyue wouldn't want to waste that tongue. In ancient times, blood ties were important, otherwise the original owner would not have been despised by Xiao Zhongli's biological parents and chose to be raised under his knees. Of course, Zhang is an exception. So, unless absolutely necessary, Tang Zhangyue will not give up on Xiao Jinghuan. Even if this scoundrel is absurd, she can still turn a blind eye. As long as we cut off our feelings for the Zhang family and avoid further troublemaking the Xiao family. Xiao Jinghuan's eyes were red, with blood relatives below him on one side and the loving Zhang family on the other. No matter how absurd he was not that heartless and unjust person. In fact, I have already made a decision in my heart, it just requires a process to adapt. Xiao Zhongli looked coldly, not like he was looking at his biological father, but like he was looking at an outsider, a stranger. Just Xiao Zhongli's gaze turned to the opposite cell, where there were two people. One had helped him when he was young, and the other had set aside everything to seek justice for him and punish the people of the Qian family. Before Qian Zishu and him, he firmly chose him. He did not hesitate to follow the Xiao family. At this moment, Xiao Zhongli felt his blood boiling, which was the reason for the flow of Xiao family blood. He was able to go through fire and water as his grandmother wished, and died in battle for the Chu state, and died to protect the people of the Li people. The dungeon is still bustling outside because a mouse droppings have not yet reached a consensus. The other people who betrayed the Xiao family, under the manipulation of Yu Zishu, all received retribution and either returned to their dental profession or fled to their hometowns in despair. Let's first talk about Zhang Yulan. When she left the general's mansion, she was penniless and wanted to go back to her mother's house to stay temporarily. When she had enough rest, she would look for her adopted son to think about her future livelihood. The next day, fecal water was splashed in front of the door. My sister Law crossed her waist and cursed loudly at the door. Who? Which bastard did it? Do you know who we are? Oh, who do I think I am? It turns out to be the Zhang family. By the way, your foolish little lady who betrayed the general's mansion, disregarding even her biological son, and tightly clinging to the adopted son of the farming family, has she returned? Who is this cursing at? Zhang couldn't resist it. Zhang is about to go to the kitchen to fetch some water for cleaning. She still finds it troublesome to boil water as there are no maids to serve in her mother's family. As I passed by, I happened to hear a rural woman there, full of strange emotions. Zhang was immediately annoyed. What are you talking about? The rural woman looked around and saw that Zhang was there. She immediately spat at Zhang's sister Law and said, "You deserve to be splashed with feces. You can climb the door of the general's mansion like that. That's a blessing you've accumulated for generations. You've been ruined by these slutty women. I see, slutty women have some tricks with that white-eyed wolf's adopted son. Maybe the two of them will get together and let the legitimate son of the general's mansion be a living green-haired turtle. No wonder this adopted son can't compare to his own. Emotions are not about family, it's about love." When did Zhang, who had been pampering the general's mansion for many years, see this battle? Having been scolded, Zhang's face turned blue. When she reflected on herself, the rural woman felt unlucky and was about to leave when she screamed in shock. Ah. I'm fighting with you. The Zhang brothers did not have the same mentality as their fathers and did not even pass the imperial examination. Over the years, they relied on the connections of the general's mansion to make a living in the capital. However, today they were called off from all business and even criticized by their neighbors, causing a lot of discussion. After inquiring, I found out what my sister had done. The Zhang brothers angrily returned home and saw Zhang fighting with a rural woman. Zhang's strength naturally did not match that of the opponent, and he was pressed to the ground, covered in feces and water, and his head was still disheveled, with no image at all. Upon seeing her brothers return, Zhang quickly screamed, "Big brother, fourth brother. Help me." The elder brothers separated the mother-in-law from the Zhang family, and only then did they see the Zhang family's face adorned with color. Zhang cried and shouted, "I want to report to the government. My brothers help me report to the government. We must not spare this old devout woman lightly. Rural women are easy to bully." Immediately, he spat heavily at the entrance of Zhang's house and said, "Just go. My old lady can't be honest yet. Hey, the neighbors have seen it, you moved your hand first. It was you who couldn't bear the truth and rushed over. I was just defending myself. Don't think I'm old and don't understand the laws of Chu." The Zhang brothers turned pale with iron. As the eldest brother, he calmly asked Zhang, "Little sister, but did you move your hand first?" Zhang: "Sure. Big brother, it was that old lady who first slandered me and brother Shu." "Did you move your hand first?" Zhang was shouted at and immediately froze, nodding blankly in response. The Zhang brothers quickly invited the old lady away and said, "It was our little sister who didn't understand and surprised you. We apologize to you first with her." Finally, the person was sent away, and the Zhang brothers also closed the door, blocking the neighbors' attempt to explore the truth. Zhang's parents passed away shortly after she got married, and the family was led by the Zhang brothers. Due to their partnership in business, their interests were tied together and they did not separate. The Zhang brothers recounted the actions of the Zhang family that had been spread outside, and the latter's heart gradually cooled. Zhang's face looked anxious. "Why do all the streets and alleys know about my affairs at the general's mansion?" "It's just a word of mouth," she said. The Zhang brothers looked at each other before finally looking at the Zhang family. They didn't say she deliberately concealed anything about the general's mansion, but said, "Little sister, the Taoist who was found by your parents back then to show your adopted son his appearance." Zhang said, "They said my son will be promoted to a higher position and be remembered in the annals of history." When they mentioned this, Zhang was very grateful. "At that time, I even showed the Taoist the 8 characters of my elder brother's birthday, but the Taoist said that his appearance did not match the 8 characters and asked if I was deceiving him. It wasn't until Xiao Zhongli was found that I realized how capable that Taoist was." Zhang's elder brother said, "Even if a Taoist has some abilities, if his adopted son can really be promoted to a higher position and be remembered in history in the future, then he is also an ungrateful person. The general's mansion has raised him for many years, and he can cooperate with outsiders to cause the general's mansion to be destroyed. How much kindness does he have to you? How much glory can you gain from his achievements and fame?" Zhang's 4th brother said, "Little sister, we actually wanted to persuade you a long time ago. Over the years, we have been in love with General's mansion, and the old lady cares about Brotherly. You should treat Brotherly better. Brotherly at least crawled out of your belly, the legitimate son of General's mansion. That's not a big idea. Ah. We have no face to face the General's mansion again, and the Zhang family cannot tolerate the traitors who have taken care of our General's mansion, so little sister. You call me a traitor to the General's mansion." End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Traitor Zhang is disdained by his mother's family, and his adopted son Qian Zishu is trapped. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Traitor Zhang is disdained by his mother's family, and his adopted son Qian Zishu is in a desperate situation. Zhang is not a fool either. He quickly sorted out his thoughts and looked at the expressions of his elder brother and sister. In law, who else could not understand? Don't you treat me like a fool. After all these years, how much kindness have my siblings and sister. In law received by taking advantage of me marrying into the general's mansion? Oh, without any benefits, if something happens, they want to drive me away, right? Yes, general's mansion is in trouble, but is that what I want to see? It was the book guy who was so angry that he did it. I also learned about it yesterday, the day I copied my home, not much earlier than you. Why am I a traitor to the general's mansion, a criminal of the general's mansion? Since they have torn their faces, the Zhang sister. In law no longer need to hide or hold back. I am not satisfied with my sister. In law who has been married for many years. She returned to her mother's house empty-handed. Which time before wasn't it big or small? It's okay if my sister. In law doesn't give our family a face. She's hiding from the general's mansion and indulging in free eating and drinking at her mother's house, treating her sister-in-law and nieces like maids. At least they are also known as the 3 books and 6 rights. They openly married the head lady of the Zhang family, and there is no sister-in-law who would trample on them like this. Alright, now, I learned from the head of the household that my sister-in-law was doing this kind of thing, which weighed heavily on their hearts. Can't they vent their frustrations under the guidance of the head of the household? What my sister-in-law said is that you assisted the adopted son in his tyranny. The old lady wanted to drive away the white-eyed wolf back then, but it was you who blew the pillow wind on her brother-in-law, causing the white-eyed wolf to stay and do this kind of thing today. Even if you are not a criminal of the general's mansion, you are still an accomplice. Now that the general's mansion is in decline, you have lost your support, little sister. Why don't you learn well and still be strong everywhere? Our Zhang family doesn't take you in. Do you still want to rely on that ungrateful adopted son? Zhang's face turned pale with anger, and she suddenly stood up, pointing to the trembling fingertips of the 2 sister-in-law sisters. She then looked at the 2 brothers who were silent and golden, and said, "What sister-in-law sisters say is what the brothers mean, right? Big brother. Little sister, try not to go out these days. This is the only concession we can make. It's also for your own benefit." Zhang bit her lower lip and said, "Don't say it's for me. I can't afford it. Since my brothers and sister-in-law can't tolerate me, give me some silver, and from then on, I will have no further relationship with Zhang Yulan and the Zhang family." Zhang has a good idea. Her older brother and sister-in-law have taken advantage of her situation and made a lot of money in recent years. The family's savings should be abundant, and she should have contributed to it, right? Coincidentally, she was worried about going to find Shuj because she didn't have any children and wouldn't be able to make connections for Shuj in the future. The 2 older brothers turned black and turned their faces in an instant. Are you a married woman who has been married for many years, reaching out to her brother for silver? Do you think it's appropriate? Zhang, sure. What's not appropriate? You haven't been doing business under the banner of the general's mansion in recent years. You haven't used my name. Why can't you share a share of my profits? I don't want much, 500 taels. A few people gasped for air upon hearing this. Zhang's sister-in-law couldn't help but sneer and said, 500 taels. You can also speak up about the losses, sister-in-law. We are playing under the banner of the general's mansion, so we should also share the interest from the general's mansion. What does it have to do with you, sister-in-law? Zhang felt a pang in her heart as she thought of the letter of separation that the old lady had forced her to write before leaving the general's mansion. In the next second, she didn't have time to feel sad for Autumn. Faced with her indifferent brothers and harsh sister-in-law, Zhang confidently said, "So what? Then I am also the legitimate 4th wife of the general's mansion." Bah! Do you still want to wear the banner of the general's mansion? If you're still a member of the general's mansion, you shouldn't be in our Zhang family at this time, but in the dungeon. Another sister-in-law of the Zhang family said, "Yes, little sister. When you go to the dungeon, we will take care of the 500 taels you brought and send them to you. Now, little sister, you tell us that you can retreat completely. Have you already separated from Xiao Sailang before the general's mansion raided the house?" Zhang looked at her mother's family incredulously, and even if her sister-in-law harbored hostility towards her, her brothers would acquiesce to their actions. She thought of her childhood memories again. Why can't her family accommodate her after only a few decades? Is it a big change? Zhang was forced to do nothing but say, "Then I won't leave. I'll see if those people know I'm still in the Zhang family and will throw feces again." How can you do business after throwing feces? This is, completely breaking ties with her family. The Zhang brothers looked very ugly. Little sister, you must think carefully. You can't go back to the general's mansion anymore. If you tear your face from us again, your only hope in this life is that adopted son. Why is Zhang not afraid? But whenever she thought of the Taoist's words, she was confident and fearless in everything she said. She didn't even want her own son, mother-in-law, or family for her shuj. If Qian Zishu leaves her unattended and follows the laws and regulations of the Great Chu, it would be disloyalty and unfilial. If Qian Zishu wants to be promoted to a higher position, it is impossible for him to have this stain. But she didn't know that in the original plot, there was no law that required the Great Chu to destroy the country and the Qian Zishu to be promoted to higher ranks, and there was no law that required the adoptive mother to be kind and responsible. Zhang personally severed ties with his mother's family, obtained 100 taels of silver, and went to seek refuge with his adopted son Qian Zishu. Qian Zishu's progress here is not going smoothly either. He should have been promoted to a higher rank to eliminate such a great calamity in the general's mansion for his majesty. However, according to the imperial decree, he was only given a dilapidated mansion and a vacant position, and had nothing else to do. Qian Zishu's expression stiffened slightly, and he forced a smile. He asked the eunuch who came to announce the decree this time, "Grandpa, is this all over?" The eunuch waved his brush, as if he was using some bad luck. He pinched his nose and throat, saying, "Are you suspecting your majesty's memory is not good, or are you suspecting that the others missed the words?" "Well, Grandpa, how dare I? It's just that I did a great job this time." "Outstanding." "What outstanding? Is it also called outstanding if the general's mansion's warehouse was emptied early?" "What?" Qian Zishu exclaimed in surprise, "The warehouse has been emptied." "Who is it?" The eunuch rolled his eyes and said, "The commander of the royal guards has been trained. The general's warehouse has been emptied early on, and a large amount of wealth has gone missing. If it weren't for your selflessness, you wouldn't even have this official position. What else can't you be satisfied with? That property caused the Qian family to break many teacups. The eunuch also has lingering palpitations. With so much wealth added up, it's incomparable to a country. No wonder the heavenly family is so angry." At first, in order to show it to the world, the Qian family also thought that after stealing the house in the end, the things would be returned to the private warehouse, but they sent a lot of valuable things to the general's mansion, who knew the eunuch dare not think anymore. There is still a tough battle waiting for him to fight when he returns to the palace. After all, dragon anger cannot be extinguished. Qian Zishu respectfully escorted the eunuch away. What Qian Zishu was thinking was, "This court is like a sieve, copying the house for free. Can such words be released?" Even the eunuchs who issued imperial edicts in the palace knew that at this time, there was really nothing worth wielding real power in the state of Chu, and any position was similar. I couldn't have imagined it. The next day, I went to the officialdom to report and suffered a lot of frustration. "So, is that the one from the general's mansion? His surname is Qian now. Isn't the Qian family already in prison? The Qian family has gone in, isn't it that Qian Zishu doesn't have it? With such a family background, one can still secure a position in the court." Sigh. "You keep your voice down, don't you want to die? Don't you want to say that? That Qian Zishu betrayed his trust and even betrayed the general's mansion, which he had raised for many years. All right, he's not old yet, he's just temporarily in his position, and the rest depends on his performance. If we can't stand it then, we can go to your majesty's place to read a book." "That's right." He thought that if he did that treacherous thing, would your majesty be able to use him again? "It's a beautiful idea. Your majesty hates the person who betrayed him the most. When the general's mansion collapses, he loses his usefulness. After all, he's just a newcomer and doesn't understand the world. Indeed, it's too young." End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Zhang and Qian Zishu's separation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Zhang and Qian Zishu's separation. According to the laws and regulations of the state of Chu, unless hereditary, the age for appointment as an official should be based on the age of 14 years after the imperial examination. However, Qian Zishu's career has come to an end, and he may not be able to secure his position at any time. When Qian Zishu returned home, he saw his foster mother Zhang sitting on the steps with a bundle, disheveled and unkempt, with a strange smell on her body. Qian Zishu pinched his nose and took 2 steps back. "Mom, what's the smell on you?" Zhang's face stiffened as she recounted everything that had happened today before finally saying, "Brother Shu, I only have you left." As he spoke, he also said to go back to his mother's house. Zhang Shixin swore confidently, "Brother Shu, you were raised by your mother from a young age. Do you have any achievements? Don't you know? When you reach great success, they just want to establish this relationship, but I won't agree." Qian Zishu couldn't express himself in a word, but he didn't say anything. He invited Zhang into the courtyard and said, "In a few days, my 3 brothers and sisters-in-law from the countryside, as well as their children, will come to live here. Miss Wang, please bear with us." Zhang was already dissatisfied with this dilapidated courtyard, and when she heard that the Qian family was still moving in, she felt even more uncomfortable. Although she was more inclined towards this adopted son because of the Taoists' words back then, how could she feel comfortable when the Qian family exchanged children and treated her biological son like that? Besides living under the same roof as that family. "I disagree with this matter." Qian Zishu suddenly thought of those old foxes in the officialdom who secretly accused him. He frowned and said, "Mother, should I also blame my judgment and decision? Now that Zhang has lost the large support of the general's mansion and cannot return to her mother's family, can we not point fingers at this adopted son?" Seeing that her adopted son's expression was not right, Zhang immediately felt uneasy and said, "What's wrong with this? But have you been wronged outside? This can be considered as poking money at the book's heartfelt nest." Immediately, his face turned cold and he said, "It's okay. Mom, if you don't want to stay, I can help you find an inn to stay." Zhang's heart also cooled for the most part, and her eyes looked sorrowful as she said, "Brother Shu, in your eyes, the Qian family is your relative, isn't it?" Qian Zishu didn't respond. He was a bit tired, leaving only a trace of his back, and went back to the room to sleep. Zhang casually found a bedroom to lie down, but stayed up all night. She tossed and turned, unable to sleep. She thought of the life in the general's mansion, the maids and servants who served her, the words the old lady had told her to leave the general's mansion empty-handed, followed by the ruthless faces of her brothers, the suppressed disgust of her sister-in-law, and finally the adopted son leaning towards the Qian family will fall asleep and suddenly wake up. Zhang looked around with despair and vicissitudes in his eyes. What was this? She recalled and found that the memory points were inconsistent with her previous life. Firstly, the old lady caught her going through the back door and intercepted her payment of the outstanding capital to the beast. Secondly, this courtyard was vastly different from the courtyard that the beast had first been rewarded by His Majesty. Anyway, there were signs yesterday that the beast was heading towards the Qian family. She spent her whole life trying to understand and comprehend. It was ridiculous. It's really ridiculous. After she abandoned Shiro and her parent-child, even if the beast rose to fame, it still turned to the Qian family. Zhang spat at the bedside twice, tears blurring her eyes, and she couldn't help but laugh again. She's back, she's back. She quickly retrieved 100 taels of silver from her mother's house under her pillow. Dudu. The knocking on the door interrupted Zhang's thoughts. Zhang cautiously covered her bundle and said, "Who?" "Mom, it's me." Zhang's eyes began to tinge with hatred. She quickly hid her bundle, organized her thoughts, got out of bed, opened the door, and said, "What's wrong with books, book buddies?" At the moment of opening the door, Qian Zishu was stunned. He felt that Zhang was somewhat different from yesterday, but he couldn't pinpoint exactly what was wrong. After calming down, he said, "Mother, my siblings, sister-in-law, nephews, and nieces will arrive today. Please bear with them more. Based on Qian Zishu's understanding of the Zhang family, he said he wanted to send her to the inn, and she would eventually compromise with him. In her past life, it was the same. After the people of the Qian family moved in, she used the things from the general's mansion to manage the livestock in the mansion. In the end, Qian Zishu accused her of being careless and praised her for taking care of things for her. As a result, those things never returned, and the Qian family's face was exposed. She was wronged and went to Qian Zishu to reason. How did this beast get back to her? Qian Zishu had a decent expression on his face and said, "Mom, my older brother and sister in law used to suffer a lot. You're different from them. You've been living a luxurious life since childhood, so please take care of yourself. Be patient. What kind of burden should we bear?" If she had not been biased towards this beast and had listened to the old lady's advice early on and sent him back to the Qian family, how could there be such a mess afterwards? Yes, Qian Zishu eventually achieved success and fame, and achieved great success. How much happiness did she enjoy? She was alive and angry to death. If I had known this, it would have been better to die on the exile road with the general's mansion. She regretted it, but fortunately, God gave her a chance to reform. I didn't come out of the general's mansion and also collected a sum from my mother's house. This money must never fall into the hands of this beast again. Zhang nodded and said, "Brother Shu, have you been treated well by my mother these years?" Qian Zishu was surprised by Zhang's silence and curiously said, "Mom, what do you want to say? In this way, you have turned the general's mansion into this land. My mother will not pursue it anymore. You need to take money from your family to enjoy your blessings in advance, and my mother will not stop you. Over the years, I have treated your love as a wolf's heart feeding a dog's lung. I owe a lot to my elder brother. I thought about it all night and now I want to make up for it, Brother Shu. Today I will treat you as a mother and your son. You go through your own path while I cross my own wooden bridge. From now on, we have nothing to do with each other. How about that?" Qian Zishu was dumbfounded. He didn't expect his adoptive mother, who had been in pain for over a decade, to one day abandon him. Qian Zishu gritted his back teeth and felt resentful as he thought of the bureaucratic evaluations of him behind his back. Does my mother think I'm also a white-eyed wolf? Is this still necessary? You are already. She said it clearly, but he didn't hear it. Is her voice too low? Zhang had no choice but to say again, although the Qian family is your blood relative, I also have my own blood relatives. I will continue to keep you under my knee and push him towards the old lady for you, disregarding my thoughts. In the same situation, you wronged me by staying at the inn, but let the Qian family stay. Qian Zishu, I have never apologized to you, but your words yesterday really chilled my heart. Since the general's mansion has now fallen into the fields, it is your credit. As an accomplice, it is difficult to escape. I have figured it out, and I would rather go back and follow the people of the general's mansion than continue to be cold-hearted. Qian Zishu was taken aback and said, "Mom, I didn't mean that. Yesterday, I just casually said that. Just say it casually. Are you taking the money, family, or not?" "Mother. Don't call me my mother again. Your surname is Qian, and you didn't crawl out of my stomach. After all, we have no blood relationship. Mom, aren't you freezing my heart? Are you not cold to my heart?" Even though the old lady sent the Qian family and his wife to prison, they are still locked up. As the fourth wife of the general's mansion, I tacitly agreed to this. When they were brought over, they wanted to settle accounts with the people of the general's mansion. If they couldn't find anyone, could they vent their anger on me, the former fourth lady of the general's mansion? "Mom, you're too worried." "I don't worry too much. Their family can even do things like swapping children, what else are there that they dare not do?" "Mother. Don't call me my mother again." Zhang emphasized again. Qian Zishu, feeling physically and mentally exhausted, waved his sleeve and said with a look of no more entanglement, "As you please." Zhang quickly packed her bag and ran away. As for her family, wouldn't they know about the crimes she suffered in the Qian family in her previous life? Still using her banner to gather wealth and gain power outside, she was short in front of Qian Zishu, unable to speak, and there was also a reason why her sister-in-law did not consider her. Since they are all thin ties, let's cherish each other in the future. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Zhang's Follow. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Zhang's Follow. Qian Zishu didn't expect that besides the Qian family, Qian Mama would also come knocking with grace. Qian Mama. Young master, I gave you luxurious clothing and food back then. You can't turn a blind eye now. The old slave has nowhere to go. Qian Mama is a free agent. According to theory, her qualifications make it easy for her to find a way out in other mansions, but the news of her being replaced by a young master in the general's mansion has spread throughout the capital. Which wealthy family dares to use her? Not only high-ranking officials and influential people, but also merchants and households, have kept her closed for several days. No way, Grandma Qian inquired and successfully found Qian Zishu here. Qian Mama is used to being extravagant in the general's mansion and has been following the old lady for the longest time. She is respected by the people of the mansion and has not suffered much in her old age. On the first day, the Qian family mocked her, saying, "Isn't she just a servant? How dare you eat at the same table as the host? I don't do anything, I don't know how to sweep the floor, I wash dishes and smash them. I didn't know that, but I thought I would invite an aunt back." Grandma Qian slapped the woman in the mouth on the spot. Qian Zishu, who was close by blood, immediately frowned and scolded Qian Mama, "What if you gave me luxurious clothes and food back then? I was still a baby and had no right to choose. Now serving your majesty, I will also be forced to maintain a reputation of disloyalty. If I don't have the nurturing kindness of the general's mansion, with my abilities, I can also be used by your majesty." Qian Mama looked at Qian Zishu incredulously for a moment before mocking, "Without the general's mansion, young master, you wouldn't even have a chance to read and read. Young master wouldn't have naively thought that a farmer would provide a scholar, would he? Do your brothers still know how to write their own names? There are rumors outside that young master is ungrateful, so it's not a lie. You don't want to do this anymore." Coincidentally, he gave money to Zishu and kicked out this lazy and domineering servant. Qian Mama was not polite either. As soon as she left the yard, she began to complain about her suffering and splashed on the ground, even if it meant killing a fish and breaking a net. "Back then, it was the Qian family who cried and begged me to give that child a way out. They couldn't afford to raise a wealthy child, so I softened my heart. Who knew that when the truth was exposed, I was old and couldn't find a job? They said it was good to take me in, but in fact, they thought I was eating an extra bite of rice. The child who received benefits is even better. Now that he has grown up, he has a sharp tongue. He said he was young at the time and had no choice, otherwise he would not have accepted the favor of the general's mansion. If you venture on your own, you will also make a difference. I'm sorry, is it possible that living is one thing, and that poor farmer's family can provide him with education? I'm afraid I didn't grow up digging and eating in the field. What kind of spring and autumn dreams do you have? You still want to erase my credit. I have lived so long, I have never seen such a shameless person before. No wonder everyone outside scolds him as a white-eyed wolf. If I had known, I shouldn't have promised his parents back then. Wasting my reputation for nothing and leaving me in such a miserable situation. God open your eyes, why don't you kill this ungrateful family?" Qian Mama and the Qian family had a very ugly argument. Tang Zongyue, who learned the news in the dungeon, nodded satisfied and said, "It's done well." Yu Zishu handed over the remaining silver and said, "Mom, this is the remaining money." Tang Zongyue dodged sideways. "Mother. Tang Zhongyue said, since I can give you these, there will naturally be other things around me. You don't need to give me anything left, take it back. But mother. Tang Zhongyue said, since you stood up and fought for the general's mansion, you have become a thorn in the eye of the emperor today. Now that the Chu state has no general's mansion to fight for the court, it may not last for a few years. There are internal and external troubles, and you and Yenner are afraid that it will be even more difficult. With this little silver money, you can treat it as collateral, and I hope that you can protect Yenner when you really arrive. If that's not possible, you can come to the border to find us. Mom, where are you talking about? Yen Yang is my first wife, I'm not protecting her. Who should I protect? Tang Zhongyue is watching. She believes in the character of these three son. Law. Under the imperial decree, the fate that truly awaits is exile at the border, while servants and maids sell. The border is located in the north of later generations, and the capital city of Chu was built in Qian. If you walk, it will take at least a few months. Moreover, in later times, the northern region experienced a rise in industry, with densely populated and bustling big cities. In this fictional era, the south to north water diversion project has not yet emerged, and the first challenge for exiled border areas is the issue of draft. The south is surrounded by mountains and water, while the north is short of resources. The only fortunate thing is that there is no bad habit of foot binding in this fictional era. In the space, the general's mansion's warehouse is rich from east to west, but it can't be so ostentatious to ride a carriage during exile, can it? Midway, you can rely on passing through towns to buy some things, and you need to store more water. As for why not purchase from states and counties? She is worried that the larger the place and the more crowded it is, the easier it is to be tracked. However, Tang Zhongyue never expected that Zhang had actually returned. Steadily following behind the exiled team. It was discovered by the Yamen attendant who escorted them. Madam, this person claims to be from your mansion. The entire escort team did not feel sorry for the family of the general's mansion. The woman who lowered her head raised her head, and Tang Zhongyue couldn't help but frown. Everyone else remained silent and didn't express any opinions, except for Xiao Jinghuan, who was the most hilarious bastard. How did you come back? We don't welcome you. You hurry up and leave. Didn't you leave? How far have you been? How long has it been since Zhang last saw Xiao Jinghuan? Before getting married, she was happy with him and was willing to have children for him. However, she didn't like Xiao Jinghuan's lack of knowledge and skills, and she hated iron for not becoming steel. Thinking of the 3 wives and 4 concubines in the backyard of a wealthy family, Xiao Jinghuan remained faithful to her and did not dare to complain a few words in person. She regretted in her previous life and began to reflect on herself during these days of following. Why can't she share the joys and sorrows with Shiro? Why can't we treat her and Shiro's mutual crystallization better? Why are you obsessed with your mind? Tang Zhongyue rolled her eyes and said, all right, Lao Si. Xiao Jinghuan snorted and turned her head, leaving Tang Zhongyue to handle the matter. Tang Zhongyue scrutinized the Zhang family. Under the influence of the original owner, Tang Zhongyue maintained most of the original owner's temperament, and through these days, she was not seen through by her descendants and Aunt Lu. Besides, she seems to have inherited the original owner's sharp gaze. She saw the difference in this Zhang family. The Zhang family, who had just left the general's mansion, was the one who was pampered by her elder brother and sister. In-law parents before getting married, and was not subjected to any competition from her husband's family after getting married, yet still pampered and treated well. The Zhang family in front of me had a weathered eyebrow, exhausted and unable to conceal it. She didn't have the surface luxury that was nurtured by the general's mansion, but instead looked like an old woman who had gone through countless hardships. In a moment, Tang Zhongyue said, do you want to follow us? Mother, said Zhang, tears streaming down her face, I can't bear the sound of, you and Lao Si are separated, Zhang changed her words and said, Madam, I know I'm confused. I led a wolf into my house and left that disaster to harm the whole family. It hurt the mother-son bond between Xilang and you, and made my eldest brother not enjoy a day of mother's care. Xiao Zhongli frowned as he listened, his gaze fixed on his grandmother. He is actually quite old. The Xiao family is facing difficulties now, and the only one who can handle it is his elder brother. But he always feels like his grandmother is the ultimate anchor in this family. As long as his grandmother is here, the family will be there. Tang Zongyue said, so, do you want to repair the mother-son relationship between me and Xilang now, and make up for your care for my elder brother? Zhang, is our Xiao family a place where you can come and go whenever you want? Zhang lowered her eyes and said, Madam, I don't seek fame, I only seek to advance and retreat with the Xiao family. It seems like I'm trying to break my face and follow along. Please fulfill, Madam. Zhang's face turned pale, and for a moment, he kowtowed a few times. End of this chapter.